Well, welcome everybody to Let's Get Digital. Give yourself a round of applause for showing up today. Go ahead. Great. So, and for the recording, that anyone that's listening on the podcast, it's a beautiful 72-degree and sunny day in Paradise, Iowa City, Iowa. So Let's Get Digital is a monthly meetup for modern marketers. Every single month, we bring together the community and a panel of experts on a single topic. And our topic today is social media marketing. If we were having this meetup 5 years ago, we would have a hashtag and tell everyone to live tweet this event. If this was 3 years ago, we'd probably put together a Snap filter and tell everyone to use the filter and swipe it. It's 2019. I don't even know what to do. Follow me on TikTok, I guess. How many people here are on TikTok? We got one of our speakers. Chris, you're going to have to explain this later. We all want to know what TikTok is. So a lot has changed, of course. And I'm really excited to bring together this panel of speakers that can demystify the platforms today, but also provide really actionable advice for people that are working in social today or working in marketing capacities. I know that the room is full of people from all different backgrounds. I'll ask you about it in 1 second. But first, I want to bring up the panel. So why don't you go ahead and bring up Laura, Chris, and Mike and give them a round of applause.
My name is Michael Benning, and I am the social media director at the University of Iowa, managing the strategy for organic and paid social media.
Oh, and by the way, you guys hear me okay on this one? So I forgot to say, everyone here has a mic. We really stepped up our game this Let's Get Digital. So thank you, Talon, by the way, our video and audio guy. And also all the Sculpt team members. I forgot to give them a major shout out last time, but they put together this whole event. It's awesome. Everyone has a mic. So what I meant to say, you're gonna have to go one more time, is who are you? Name what you do, describe what you do. One career highlight. So give people an example of something impressive you've done around social, but then also what is your first username? So whether that was AIM, MSN, AOL, think back, tell people where they can find you. So go ahead.
Cool. All right, so Michael Benning, social media director at the University of Iowa. I'm responsible for managing the strategy and execution of our paid and unpaid social media. And one career highlight to share, definitely deserve credit. Haley and Bruce are on my team, and we are a really good team together. Probably highlight for me would be last year, Rival IQ, insights and analytics company for social media, came out with a report measuring engagement across higher education on social media, and the University of Iowa's Facebook page was the #1 most engaged Facebook page in all of Division I schools, and #3 overall across all channels.
And what we really want to know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the AIM thing. Okay, so let's see. My very first one. All right, I'm going to be real vulnerable here. It's me a little awkward maybe. But I have my chest encaves a little bit, like it's not like flat across, it's like a dent. And so my AIM name was based off the dent in my, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks for making me share that.
All right, now we know. We're all better for it. Laura, go ahead.
My name is Laura Kivligan. I'm a digital engagement manager at Sculpt. So basically day-to-day client management, digital strategy, social media strategy across platforms. My biggest career highlight, I would say, is Kim Kardashian replied to one of my tweets. And I teach a class at the University of Iowa, and this is always like the one that gets the most acclaim. But she does all of her own social media, so it was a pretty big deal. I also won a Shorty Award for a digital campaign that I did with Briggs & Stratton, a small engine manufacturer out of Wisconsin. So that was exciting as well. My first AIM name was LBFH32, which actually I still go by on a lot of social channels, so there, do with that what you will.
All right, my name is Chris Cozzolino, and I guess you can consider me an Instagram growth hacker. I'm moving into LinkedIn a little bit as well. So I'm the co-founder of Uptown Creation. So what was the next thing?
What's
impressive.
Yeah, what's something
Impressive thing.
I think you're interesting, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on because you've done some like pretty high growth campaigns. Like, what's something you could share
So
about that?
Evan Carmichael is one of our clients, which you may or may not know, but he has a YouTube following similar to Gary Vaynerchuk's. So he's got like 1.7 million subscribers. And we actually convinced him to start an Instagram. So that's how we started working with him. And in the last year, he's grown to like 116,000 followers now. So that was a pretty cool experience. And then my first AIM name was Soccer Freak 473 because I played soccer.
Yeah, I want to meet the original Soccer Freak. No one ever has the original. It's always 4, 5, 3, 4. 2. Yeah, that's great. All right, awesome. Well, so we're going to kick it off today and get right into some of the tactical learning-based things. And I'm really curious off the bat. You know, we talk a lot at Sculpt about different strategies, channels, what's relevant today. And again, having this conversation in 2019 is so different. And I want to know off the bat, what is, in your opinion, from your experience, give an example if you can, the most overrated and underrated social media strategy, channel or tactic today? So something that people throw out that they always say to try, that you believe is overrated or underrated. So go ahead. Anyone that wants to start.
Yeah, so speaking to Instagram, I'd say a pretty overrated, if you can't do it right, would be forcing yourself to stay completely branded on Instagram. What I always tell people is that people go on Instagram for education or entertainment. And so if you're not providing either one of those things, nobody really cares 100% about like the earrings that you're selling if there's no reference to it. Like you can make those posts in like in context with like other things that are going to teach people stuff, but if your whole profile is just revolving around like your work culture and things like that, it's going to be hard to gain traction.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit earlier at the office, and I think one of the most both overrated and underrated platforms is Facebook. I know there's a lot of controversy. There's always something new that's coming out, privacy settings and scandals. But truly, it is, as a marketing tactic, I think something that can't be missed. And as money kind of goes away from broadcast TV, people are not buying these huge commercial spots anymore. It's going to start filtering into social media, and I think already has to some degree. And so ads are going to become more expensive. And so if you're looking to kind of win in marketing at a basic level right now, you need to be investing in social media and growing your audience now while it's still affordable and attainable for small businesses.
Yeah, my underrated is actually Facebook as well because it gets dogged a lot. It gets dogged because everyone's grandparents are on it or the older generations on it, which is not entirely true at all. If you look at analytics, and so if you're posting content that is relevant to the people that are following you, it's still a valuable use of time and can be really advantageous. And not to be shuttered because it's the oldest platform. It's still by far the biggest platform, and people are still on it quite a bit.
Well, and actually, you could maybe prove this. So I feel like one of the most common rhetoric things we hear is, our college students really aren't on Facebook anymore. Can you demystify that by any means?
Yeah, we certainly have a decent number of college students that follow our account. Certainly, our younger alumni are still on Facebook. We target an older audience on our Facebook when we post there, but we know that students do follow us because they are interacting with us all the time.
Yeah, so I teach a social media marketing class at the university, and I did a recent kind of mini focus group with them to ask them where they're spending time day to day. And I kind of got the same sentiment before this, that a lot of them weren't on Facebook. It was Instagram stories, maybe some on Snapchat and Twitter. But then when I asked who logs into Facebook every day, I would say 85% of them raised their hand. So while they probably like Instagram or Snapchat or other channels better, they are still logging in and active on Facebook, whether they want to admit it or not.
So let's poll the audience a little bit just so we get a feel for who's in the room. How many people here own their own business? Okay. How many people here actively manage the social media on behalf of whatever company that they work for or own? Okay. How many people here are students, like here to learn? Okay, cool. And what did we miss here? I always miss something. How about e-commerce people? How many people here have an e-commerce based operation? Okay. Okay, great. Okay, that's quite a bit of different people here. So I'm always curious, just getting into the meat of what we do is always like what's working today. And every time I ask someone that, they have a different answer. I remember I met with you a while ago, maybe a couple of years ago, and you guys were just starting to do Snapchat as a university. And today I feel like the Snapchat story that you guys post is probably one of the more engaged platforms you guys have for your audience. And so I'm really curious, what in your universe are you seeing is working really well that people here could take away for their own companies to try?
Sure. I was thinking about this and thinking about like creatively, what are we building that is so engaging? And I was kind of struggling with it because I think what I'm seeing that is performing best is the real content. Is it, a real-time event or an award that was won recently? Anything that can be tied more closely to things that are happening in the real world tend to do better. The kind of evergreen content, I think, is a necessary part of social media, but in terms of performance and getting engagement, things that are tied to actual people and then closely tied to real-time events, I find do really well, and probably why you've seen so much success with the University of Iowa. I mean, they have real-time stuff going on all the time, and it is very timely and engaging.
And just to go along with that, what I was going to say is memes and meme strategy. And that kind of plays along with something that's pretty timely. And so I guess two examples I have in that is Fyre Festival, if you guys seen that documentary. If you haven't, go watch them, watch both of them and see which one you think is better. But that shows how much influence influencers can have on creating an image and creating what does and does not exist. And then the other example is Bird Box on Netflix. I think something like 70 or 80% of the user base like watched some of the movie just because it was so widespread. And so what you're able to do with a meme strategy is you're able to take content that may not be completely relevant and then make it relevant to other audiences. So I know like for Bird Box, they were putting like blindfolds around football players, and then you're tapping into like Super Bowl culture and all that. And you're just bringing in awareness to where other people wouldn't have seen that content.
The big thing for us that is probably exploded that over the past year would be Instagram stories. And the opportunity there, it's one of the few places that's not confined by the organic reach issue that we're seeing in other places. And obviously, it's just become such a huge feature that so many people on Instagram are using. And we've really enjoyed kind of that opportunity.
Okay, so how do people how does someone that has an Instagram account that's trying to grow their account use stories the most effective way? Like, what are you seeing work really well on stories? Whether that's sort of curating and like reposting or polls or some of the built-in features. What would you advise someone do, minimum amount of post frequency that they should try to really get a hang of stories?
So the one piece of advice I'll offer is related to length. And then I bet you guys have some great content suggestions. But we know for all the other social media channels that brevity is super important. We want to be, I've read your posts on Facebook are engaged like by 50% more if you keep it less than 80 characters. And we know that brevity is extremely important on Twitter and Instagram as well. So why would that be any different on Instagram stories is kind of my own philosophy. And I see our peers in higher education totally ignoring that and having these like 20 posts long Instagram stories, and we don't understand that. Why are you doing that? We want people to watch the entire story from beginning to end. So we have tested and measured the length of retention based on how many posts we have, and we see the significant drop off after basically 6 posts, and we see like kind of a sweet spot for us in 4 to 6 posts long for Instagram stories. So that's for us. I don't know that if that's the case for everybody, but that's what we're seeing.
And when do you publish your stories? Like, does it happen at the same time every day, and then you publish them a certain amount of times per hour or day?
Yeah. So we found that posting it in the middle of the afternoon is more advantageous for us if we can than something that started at night. So for instance, last night we had an event. We can't control what time an event takes place. So we would change it, but we started our story last night and it received fewer views than a typical story would have had we started in the middle of the afternoon.
Oh, go for it.
So what I was gonna say is that I think a thing that gets overlooked in stories a lot is the use of hashtags, because people just kind of forget that you can use them. So since that is the case, less people are using hashtags, so the audience that you can reach is a lot bigger. I had a client today that usually gets like 50 story views, and she used like hashtag keto diet and got like 1,700 and was going crazy about that. And then I guess the other thing is the countdown timer that just came out. And so you're able to set a countdown timer for, anything, an event, but somebody could make it so an alarm will be brought up. So what I'll have a lot of my clients do is use a countdown timer like 3 hours before they're gonna go live on Instagram. And then they'll do an Instagram live that will provide some sort of value, and then do an Instagram or an IGTV based on that afterwards.
Yeah, we're using Instagram stories, I think, as kind of a add-on to content. And so we'll have a pillar piece of content that we make multiple other pieces of content around. So you have this one main video or blog post, and then as a part of that, you break that off into a Facebook post, a Twitter post, maybe an Instagram stories series, and that way we're able to get kind of more life out of our content by distributing it across channels and content types.
How many people here have used Instagram TV as a user? I'm just curious. Like, you've logged on to Instagram TV and just viewed it. Couple, 3, 4. So it's not a lot. It's really interesting. Are you seeing, Chris, a lot of success with Instagram TV, and with what audiences?
Yeah, and so just to put some context, at the beginning of this month, they made it so IGTV shows up in your feed now. And so there was a big algorithm change when that happened. A little context before that, when the kind of like the founders stepped down last year of Instagram itself, the people that were promoted into the executive positions actually had like some weight in creating IGTV. So my assumption is they're going to make that work no matter what, whether it gains them money or doesn't gain them money. They're going to find a way to make that be successful just for their own agenda. But with that being said, at the beginning of this month, IGTV was available in your feed. And so I've had a good amount of my clients switch all of their video content just to exclusively being posted as IGTV. And they've seen a pretty big increase in reach. If you want a case example, if you go to Evan Carmichael on Instagram, that's spelled just like it sounds, you'll see that probably about 2 weeks ago, he was posting videos that were getting like 2,000 views each. And now with the IGTVs, he's getting like between 5,000 and 11,000 on every single video he's posting.
There you go, folks. There you go. So we asked some questions in advance, and someone that submitted a question beforehand asked this specific question. So this is a shout out to Zach, who was our panelist on the last event we had. He said, for the panel, what brands do you follow because you like the way they engage their customers? So we often forget, we live in social, we talk a lot about content, we talk about stuff that you publish, but so much of social is that interaction, is that community management piece. So who really owns that engagement with their customers super well? What can we learn from it?
I think on Instagram, Gary Vaynerchuk is a pretty classic example. But a brand itself is Bird Dogs. So if you haven't heard of that, I think they create like chubby pants for guys, like shorter pants, and they just make really funny content. And then like they kind of roast people in the comments and stuff. And they've done it really well, where they've generated a lot of revenue off of that.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking through this one too, and thinking through like, what is the last brand that I've actually liked something on theirs of social media? I could tell you a lot of brands that are doing it well because I'm in social media marketing and I look at them all the time and I'm like, oh, that was good. They responded and they're funny. But personally, I am seeing more influence from people. So influencers who are fashion inspiration on Instagram, I'm kind of following them and saying like, what are they wearing and where is that from? As opposed to saying like, oh, hey, J. Crew just posted another sweater. And so maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's different in terms of types of content you're looking for. Like, but your example with Gary Vee, like he's a person, he's a motivational person that you kind of want to align with. And so I think I look more towards people now than I do brands. And we're seeing this with some of our clients too, but how do you find the internal person to be the person that people want to connect with inside your brand? And do those people have a presence on LinkedIn? Are they visible to people? You know, I think brands that obviously do it well are, you know, Honest Company, but who was Honest Company founded by? Everybody knows Jessica Alba. Magnolia. I think Magnolia does like a fantastic job with branding and social media, but it's Chip and Joanna Gaines and everyone is obsessed with them. So I don't know. It's hard for me to say that it's actually a brand because I know with how marketing has evolved, I think so much of it comes down to that person. And so where can you kind of find that person that can speak to your brand or kind of connect with people?
Just a quick interruption. Do mascots have social media accounts? Does Herky the Hawk have a social?
He does. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Speaking
Related note.
related, unrelated. Now, I think that sports teams can actually provide quite a bit of inspiration, specifically with the way that they interact with their audiences. Specifically for me, I love the Chicago Cubs, and so I follow their account really closely, and they are awesome at engaging with the people that post to them and talk to them. During like rain delays, they'll allow fans to ask questions, and they'll actually go through and answer as many of them as possible, and they're hilarious or insightful. For instance, like one person would be like, I need to like get out of work early. Can you write me a letter for my boss? And they like literally created a mini letter saying Zach has an excuse to leave work now so he can watch the Cubs. Posted it in response. So like I would just maybe search, if you're a sports fan, check your favorite sports teams. They are probably pretty savvy at interacting with fans.
That's amazing. Anybody here follow police departments on social?
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. You want to talk about a brand that shouldn't be good at social media, that is so good at social media?
Yeah.
Follow your local police department on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. You will be so amazed. I don't know who does it. That's who I should have brought on the panel. You guys are great. But I'm so curious how they operate. So something to be learned.
There was one from Iowa City Police that was someone was riding a unicycle and playing the violin in the middle of the road somewhere the other night, and I got that on Twitter, and I don't even think it was a joke. I mean, it was like a real call that had come in. So you can't make that.
Something that I come back to a lot, and I think what they're good at, as an example, beyond this like very authentic voice that you just wouldn't expect from a police department, is that today I've seen a big trend is that what I would call like the comment is the content. So how you respond to something that's going viral, that's trending, that's interesting, is often going to be as engaging or get you as much earned reach as the original post itself. So you can actually get quite a bit of visibility, not as the person that goes viral, but as the person that has the wittiest, funniest, most clever, interesting, real comment to the top post. So something to think about. I want to get some audience questions too, so be thinking about yours. But first I wanted to ask something for the people that are just getting started in social, and for you all that have quite a bit of experience in building a career in social media. Mike before at ACT and on the agency side, you, Laura, I want to know what is one thing that you would recommend people do, or sort of your best practical advice for getting started in social for people that don't have a lot of experience yet.
The first thing that I always recommend and go to every time is to create a strategy document that outlines what goals that you need accomplished, and then figuring out how social media is going to help you accomplish those goals. So really taking time to think through what your overall goals are, who your audiences are, and based on those, then deciding which social media channels you should be on and how you're going to use those social media channels to achieve your goals, and lastly, how you're going to measure whether you're being successful at doing that. And so that baseline strategy document is exceptionally important to kind of like have ingrained as your foundation when getting started.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take it even more basic than that. When I started in social media, the new cover image on Facebook was like all the rage. Like I had to give like a 20-slide PowerPoint presentation to companies to tell them strategies of like what to use for your cover photo. And so when I came into this, it, had a marketing background, but social media was kind of new for businesses, or maybe not brand new, but definitely on the uptick of brands starting to spend money in the space. The internet is an amazing place and has a lot of information. I would say marketers, especially social media marketers, like to give content away for free. There are so many great resources, and I think where I came from in kind of starting at an agency where social media was like on the upswing in 2008. It really is a lot of trial and error and understanding what works for your brand, seeing what experts are doing. There's so many articles about there. If you have a question about social media, I always tell my students, just Google it, because guaranteed if you have a question about it, there are 15 articles out there that can share you every detail of how they did it and how they tested it and what the results were. So I would start on the internet, ask questions, and continually test and see what works for your brand.
Yeah, and just to go along with that, I think testing is the number one thing. If you're able to get your hands dirty, just kind of see what's working. And then when you're looking for resources to learn, I found that forums are a really good way to learn. So that's pretty much, I'm self-taught through forums and YouTube videos and reaching out to people in the space that knew more than I knew. So a good forum, at least for the stuff I was learning, was Black Hat World. I'm sure you'll be able to find stuff that isn't pertinent there as well. And then MP Social is pretty good. Those are good resources to learn kind of the current things that are going on.
One thing I just thought of, I think is also really valuable to share, a common mistake or a thing that I think that brands or companies or whatever it might be don't do very well on social media if they're not using it right, would be to have that mindset that social media is how you get your word about what you want people to know about you. I think that the best way to use it is to figure out what you can say of value to someone that they want to interact with. And that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, big mindset shift. Awesome. Well, and I also want to come back to something you said about measurement, because everyone asks the question about ROI on social, and so we're going to ask it too. But first, who has a question that they want the panel to answer? Who has something that they're wondering about that this team can answer for you? Yeah, go ahead.
Specifically for Chris and Laura and Michael, if you have any input, I'd love to hear it. But what's your experience with engagement groups on Instagram? And specifically context for the question, last company I worked with, an individual I worked with was very enthusiastic about them of, hey, we only have X amount of followers now. When we work with these engagement groups, we'll be able to get 20 to 50 comments on every photo. We don't even need to use hashtag because I already have these people guaranteed to be plugging in these comments, and we'll get natural engagement, hopefully make it to the Explore page, etc. It worked a bit, didn't work that much in my opinion, but I'd love to hear your experience and maybe advice.
Wait, let me repeat that real quick for our podcast audience of the 4 people at home, probably our family that's listening. Engagement groups, very Instagram-centric type thing. A lot of people maybe not even familiar with how engagement groups work. So maybe explain a little bit about how engagement groups work and are they still effective?
Yeah, so essentially what DM groups are, you can have 15 people in a group message on Instagram. So it's pretty much, I post a picture, I'll share it with the group. Everybody in the group has like an obligation to go and comment and then like on that picture as well. And then there's rules like the comments have to be 4 words long and be relevant to the post and stuff like that. So engagement groups were crazy like 2 years ago, and people blew up from that. They've died down a bit, but where I've seen them move into is more like niche-based stuff. So if you're a realtor, then doing it just with other realtors, and then like the power that comes behind it is the size of the accounts, as well as like there's an invisible thing on Instagram called a trust score, kind of like that weighs in. If you can get, like the example that I use all the time though is like if Beyonce comments on your picture, it's gonna blow up just because it's gonna. So if you're able to get more content or comments. That's the word I'm looking for. If you're able to get more comments on a picture that are relevant and within the niche, it's going to be favored by the algorithm and shown more to people. And that kind of goes in with like power likes and stuff as well, if you've heard of that.
Yeah, second question was following up.
Yeah.
More so for other people, but how do you get introduced to those groups and become a part of them? I think is a huge thing.
How do you get introduced to engagement groups if you want to use that tactic?
Yeah. So the way that I've gotten into big engagement groups that I've never should have been in the first place is inviting really big accounts to be part of the engagement group that's 100,000 to 500,000 follower accounts, and we only have one more spot. And once you invite a bunch of people to that, you get 15 yeses, and then you invite them all at once, and now you have an engagement group with 100 to 500,000 people in it. And I guess the other way is reaching out to kind of like the ideal brand that's in your space and seeing if they'd be interested in joining something like that.
I'm just curious, what do you think the shelf life of that tactic is? Because I think it's so interesting how it's almost like gray hat SEO. There's something you can do that feels too good to be true that we'd all be surprised at how fast accounts have grown that actually are using tactics like that. How long do you think until that changes?
I think it's really hard to not allow that to happen, especially if the engagement groups are good. So as long as the accounts within them aren't commenting like useless comments and stuff. So I see the shelf life on it being probably like next year at least. If you guys saw like the world record egg, that was a big strategy that was utilized there. As well as talking about, going back to what Josh was talking about earlier, sometimes you can get a lot of engagement based on like the comments that you make on a post. And if people see that that's relevant, people gain a ton of followers just from making comments that made people laugh on the world record egg.
So that's a good point, and something to just think about is, that not all engagement is equal. And I think that's another good point is comments, and not just comments in general, but from who the comments are, seem like they have a big determining factor, not just on Instagram, but on all social media algorithms and actually getting something to take off. Would you say that's fair?
Definitely, yeah. And just some strategy to go along with this. If you haven't heard of the $80 strategy by Gary Vaynerchuk, go and YouTube that. And so it's the $80 strategy. And he goes into kind of how you can tap into your industry and socialize with people that can help you grow a lot.
So I want to come back to measurement because there's a lot of fun tactics you can do, but at the end of the day, sometimes you work for an organization or a corporation where you have to prove that what you're doing is effective. And I think anyone that works in social has felt this before, where there's different layers of what you can do. Some of it's more measurable than other things. Some of it has indirect value. Some of it has very direct value. And so I'm curious from people that have been responsible for that. If you have clients, you're very much responsible for that. If you work for an organization that reports up, you probably have to report numbers. What are you measuring, and how do you report your success to date?
So the way that I have to measure is, so I'm growth and engagement on Instagram, and that's what Uptown Creation does. So in terms of followers, it's really easy just to know the follower number, but then like you all know, not all followers are equal. So that's like a balancing act that I have to deal with is some clients just want the most amount of numbers no matter what. And I've had clients that have said, go buy fake followers for me. And I'll be like, you shouldn't do that, but they still want me to pull the trigger just because they want the number. But then in terms of the engagement factor, the big thing that I focus on is reach, and then like video views and stuff like that. If my client's reach is going up further from where I was at before, then that means that I'm doing my job.
Yeah, do we want to do a question, or do you want? Yeah, we'll go through and then. Yeah, so I mean, I think for us, it kind of varies across clients. We have a wide range of clients, and that final conversion can be very different. We work with a manufacturing company, which their conversion is, 10 meetings and a factory tour before they actually sign. So it's pretty hard to actually get ROI on an actual sign. But I mean, we look at numbers, I think, in kind of the traditional marketing funnel, and awareness, we're looking at impressions and reach. Consideration, we're looking at website traffic, clicks, engagements, and then when you get down to conversions, it's how are you tracking those conversions? Is it maybe you're getting someone in the funnel through an email submission? So understanding what the value of the customer lifetime value is and kind of backing it out that way to say, if we can get a customer, it's, their customer lifetime value is $800. So kind of how do we back out from that to then determine what are we willing to pay for one of these email submissions, and tracking conversions at that rate and saying, are we getting money back on the number of emails we're getting based on what you're seeing in terms of client conversions or customer conversions. But it really varies across business segments.
Just a different way to say exactly what Lauren said is that the way we report is totally dependent on the goals and objectives of any given campaign or issue that we are actually reporting out on. So if it's admissions related, obviously we're going to be paying attention to people, numbers of students that went to the apply page or the visit campus page. If we're trying to generate brand awareness or brand affinity, then we might pay more attention to how many page views a piece of content got and the time spent on page someone might have spent on it. Or if we're just trying to measure our overall, brand impact at the very top of the funnel, as Lauren said, we might pay attention to impressions and engagement and the follower growth that we're seeing. So it's really dependent again on the goals that we're trying to measure.
So do you recommend measuring any of those on a regular basis, and then basically for anything that's conversion based, it's a very like campaign centric?
Yep. Yeah. So on a regular basis, the things that we are measuring are impressions, engagement, follower growth, how many people are clicking on our links, and driving traffic to our website, and those are the big ones for us.
Yeah, I would say so. Similarly.
So one of the last things I want to know is that probably the first question that we're often asked when talking to other social media managers is, how do I do more with less? How do I maybe it's less budget, or usually it's time. I only have so much time. What are the ways I can be more efficient with social? And so often this is conversation about process, tools, and technology. And so I wanted to combine those two questions and ask for recommendations you have to the team of tools and tech that have made you more effective, made a greater impact by saving you time, or other recommendations you would make for things that people could cut out and stop doing, or ways that they could get more value out of what they're doing without spending as much time or budget.
Yeah, I can kick this off. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this is actually a Gary Vee content model, is this idea of pillar content. So you invest heavily in one piece of really solid, useful content, and then decide how you can break that up into useful snippets to use across social. So whether it's one, 1,500 word blog post that has a lot of detail and is, very well thought out and answers questions that people are asking, and then how do you break that up to use it across social media? From one piece of really solid content, you could be creating 15, 20 pieces of kind of this micro content. And I think that's where you start to see some economies of scale in creating content. Content is so time consuming to create. If you're able to build this pillar piece of content and then expand it from there and distribute it across channels.
Yeah, and going along with that, content takes a ton of time. So something that I tell a lot of my clients that are at lower price points is that they don't need to create the content if they're not going to do it well. So content curation is really good strategy for certain companies. For example, I have a company that's like the Blue Apron of baking. So they send out boxes and then let you have the ingredients and then you bake a cake and stuff. She doesn't need to create all that content. She can go to Instagram and go to the top posts that are performing super well and just repost those posts and schedule them out. And at the end of the day, you're going to be achieving the same thing as if you were creating that content. Because what I'm looking at for Instagram is I'm trying to get the end user that's interested in baking to the account of my client who's selling a baking product. And whatever way I can do that and they can do that, then the end goal is achieved, whether it's branded or not. The people know who's behind their brand. A lot of times, even with like the huge meme pages that you'll see, like you know the person that's behind that page if they want you to know, and then they become a brand within themselves.
Yeah, and there's actually an app that we had discussed earlier, but Stackla is an app that it's fairly expensive, but it curates content for you. So it kind of automates the process of asking people if you can use their photos. You give it parameters and it actually finds curated content that fits those parameters in your location and based on the type of photo quality you're looking for. And so that's, if you have the money, a huge time-saving tool. But a lot of brands do it. Like Think Iowa City does it really well, and Anthropologie does it really well on Instagram. They're always posting travel pictures from these other people, and they just aligns with their brand really well, and they're able to curate that.
The thing that I think is really helpful is to, going back to something I said earlier, is to have a strategy. And because when you have a strategy, you know the types of things that you are aiming to post on your channel, so you're not sitting there wasting time trying to figure out what you should be posting. You have a very good idea of the types of things that you want to post to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So that can actually save a lot of time on the back end when you have a really good plan on the front end.
So last thing, what should we look forward to? You know, generally thinking through where social is going. You know, there's a ton of platforms that are still seeming to be more relevant by the day. And I'm really curious what should be on people's radars if they're taking away something and they're going to experiment in their own little corners over the next 1 to 2 years. What do you are most looking forward to, maybe that you guys are working on in your own little silos?
Yeah, so like I've said already, Instagram has an agenda to make IGTV work. So in my eyes, it's kind of like almost like YouTube starting all over again. So you're going to be able to create content there and get a lot of reach. And there's going to be a lot of people that come up within the next year just using IGTV and using that platform. I also have a thought that Instagram is prepping to become more of like a sales front. And they have shopping on Instagram already, but that hasn't really been fully implemented, kind of like how IGTV was before it was implemented into the feed. I kind of see them trying to be the like go-to platform to make purchases on mobile, just because so much of our buying revolves around influencers, and Instagram has a large amount of the influencers.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that Instagram just feels like it has the momentum right now with Instagram stories. That's where I think a lot of people are spending their time. You know, Snapchat was up there for a while, and even talking to a lot of my students, they're kind of like, well, if I can get the same experience on Instagram, I'm not checking in there as much. And it just feels like Instagram has this momentum. They have the younger audience. They have this huge influencer network. I'd be curious to see how that kind of pans out in the next year.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think Instagram is where the tide is shifting. It's where it's rising the most. Instagram stories, again, are a prime opportunity right now, I think. And I ultimately think that it will follow a similar way as Facebook. And I think they're going to, our ability to reach people as easily as we can right now is going to be greatly diminished in the years to come. So tapping into the opportunity as we have it is going to be really important.
I've talked a lot about Instagram, but I also have some emphasis on LinkedIn. LinkedIn video is also at a pretty infantile state right now. It's being compared to like Facebook video when that first came out. And I know that LinkedIn is about to launch, or they've launched a beta for live feed, and that's going to go further and further. So they're trying to make their platform be more video based as well. And they also did a big revamp to like groups as well. So focus on video content on LinkedIn, and then the group aspect of building a following that way.
Yeah, and within that, I think LinkedIn is also a perfect place to highlight people in your organization and create, a place for thought leadership and things to talk about on a social platform without it being your brand page. We work with several clients who use LinkedIn on a personal level, and it's dramatically more successful than their brand page because people want to hear what they have to say. So.
Right on. I'll follow through and just add that Messenger as a channel. Facebook is breaking off their platform into lots of little products. Groups, that's a giant opportunity right there. Events, it's a whole separate thing. But Messenger is very, very separate from all the feed-based platforms they have, and still is very, very strong with getting high open rates in messaging and notifications right to your phone. I don't know if it will become the annoying tactic that people stop doing really quickly, but for right now, you have to focus on what's working. So I would recommend at least playing with that. There's a lot of automation being built into it. And then, as you can tell, every channel will just sort of follow suit with what Facebook did. So pay attention there and then try the next thing. I cannot wait to have this conversation in a year and see what everyone's answers are, because this was already tremendously different than what we would have been talking about 1 year ago. So I can't imagine. Thank you very much for our panel. Give them a round of applause. Okay, I know you have more questions, so please do stick around. Let's Get Digital is all about connecting with each other. So there's a few ways to connect. One, of course, just hang and swap information with people, because that's why we started this. But also, we have a Facebook group that we sort of commandeered called the Corridor Marketing and Digital Media Group. So if you go ahead and search for that, you'll find it. And it's a Facebook group where we post things from time to time, and you could use it. We also have an email list that we'll send to you, but please do continue to chat, stick around. And we do this every single month on the third Wednesday of the month, just to be consistent. Our next topic, I believe, is going to be SEO. We already have 2 speakers lined up that are going to blow your mind, because they are so deep, back in the Black Hat world side, now to the world of, content marketing being the new SEO, and just, it's amazing how fast that world moves too, and you're going to want to stick around and listen to that. So please do keep coming, and thank you very much. Please give a shout out to Merge for hosting us today. We really appreciate them. The Sculpt team for putting this together, and we'll see you next month. Thanks.